Good morning. This is your daily briefing from the New York Times. I'm your host, and today is Wednesday, August 12, 2026. We have a packed edition today, from primaries that refuse to settle, to a president smuggled off Air Force One in a catering container, to a total solar eclipse about to sweep across Europe, and much more. Let's begin. We start in Wisconsin, where the Democratic primary for governor remained agonizingly close deep into the night, the latest battlefield in a national struggle between the party's progressive and moderate wings. Early Wednesday, the race finally broke for David Crowley, the Milwaukee County executive and the standard-bearer for moderates. He defeated State Representative Francesca Hong, a Democratic socialist who had built what reporters Patricia Motzi and Tim Balk describe as a supercharged campaign of energized supporters and overwhelming grassroots momentum. Crowley's upset win, and I use that word advisedly, because he vastly exceeded expectations, leaves the broader battle between the Democratic left and the old guard largely unsettled. This primary season has been defined by that tension, and Wisconsin, as so often, proved to be the place where it played out most vividly. Now, from a domestic political cliffhanger to a story that reads like a Cold War thriller. Last month, in response to what was assessed as a dire and specific threat against Air Force One, President Trump was clandestinely removed from the jet inside a catering container. That's right, a catering container. The plane, however, was sent into the skies anyway, carrying senior officials, government employees, military personnel, and reporters, all serving, some unwittingly, as decoys. Chief White House correspondent Peter Baker, who has been traveling with presidents aboard Air Force One since 1996, reports that the subterfuge unfolded on July 8, the final day of the NATO summit in Turkey. Trump walked up the stairway to the plane that was supposed to carry him home, waved briefly to cameras, and disappeared inside. What happened next was an extraordinary operation. A catering truck pulled up, the president was believed to have entered a container, and was driven away toward another aircraft, AC-32A, while the original Air Force One took off as a flying decoy. The threat, according to the reporting, came from Iran, which has had the president in its crosshairs for years. It's a staggering revelation about the lengths to which the Secret Service and the military will go to protect a commander-in-chief and the risks they're willing to accept for everyone else on board. That Iranian threat isn't theoretical. In fact, it's evolving with alarming speed. Over 5 intense days last month, Iran launched waves of drones and missiles at U.S. troops on 3 bases in Jordan. Using advanced missiles that can suddenly change course, they pummeled defensive systems, forcing the Americans to burn through scarce supplies of Patriot interceptors. On the 5th day, July 17, the Iranians broke through. A missile struck prefabricated housing units at one base, killing 3 U.S. soldiers and wounding more than 24 others. Eric Schmidt and Helene Cooper report from Washington that this episode shows how quickly Iran's warfighting skills have adapted, even as the Pentagon runs low on the very interceptors needed to stop them. It's a stark illustration of a shifting strategic balance in the Middle East, one where deterrence is being tested in real time, with real lives. While the Middle East simmers, Europe is looking up, literally. Hours from now, a total solar eclipse will sweep across a slice of the continent for the first time in nearly 30 years. Skywatchers have flocked to places from Iceland to Spain, where the moon will completely block the sun. In London, the frenzy is palpable. Thousands are hunting for protective eyewear as prices surge and stocks sell out. Rose Asaf, a London resident, told reporter Jonathan Wolfe she hopped in a cab before 2 a.m. Tuesday, racing to a convenience store only to find a giant crowd already there. The sun will be around 90% obscured over the capital, and it seems nearly everyone wants a pair of those difficult-to-find solar shades. It's a rare cosmic event, and the excitement is contagious even if the scramble for glasses feels a bit like a Black Friday sale for the heavens. Back on the ground in Britain, politics has taken a turn for the surreal. Nigel Farage, the polarising leader of Reform UK, forced a new election in his parliamentary seat of Clacton-on-Sea after coming under pressure over his finances. His main challenger? Count Binface, a man in a trash can costume who claims to be an intergalactic space warrior from the planet Sigma Octantis IV. Amelia Nierenberg caught up with Binface, who was happy to explain his campaign logic via flowchart: win, and he's an MP; lose, and he's still Count Binface, which is a win in its own right. Farage, elected to Parliament in 2024 on his 8th attempt, announced he would resign and immediately rerun, a maneuver that Tanya Gold, writing from Clacton for the opinions section, describes as politicians slinking into a constituency to meet fans, make content for social media, and melt away. It's democracy as performance art, except the stakes, for Farage at least, are very real. Far less surreal, and utterly heartbreaking, is the scene in Cali, Colombia. A deadly earthquake struck, and as the death toll rises to at least 181, emergency workers and volunteers are racing against time to find the living trapped in the rubble. Genevieve Glatsky and Julie Turkiewicz report from the ground. Firefighters toiled in searing heat on Tuesday to pull Diana Marcella Troncoso, a 31-year-old biomedical engineer, from a collapsed building. She'd been trapped for almost 30 hours, limb safe for a hand gripping a firefighter's arm like a lifeline. The crowd chanted her name, Diana. Diana, as she was strapped to a stretcher, crying in pain. "We heard them screaming," said one rescuer. It's a scene of desperate hope amid devastation, repeated across the city. Let's stay with the Air Force One story for a moment, because the New York Times has reconstructed the operation in remarkable detail. On July 8, Trump boarded the plane as a ruse. The catering truck arrived at the rear of the aircraft. He was believed to have entered a catering container, which then carried him away toward another plane, AC-32A, while the original Air Force One, now a decoy, took off with its complement of unwitting passengers. The extraordinary subterfuge, as Eric Schmidt, Maggie Haberman, Eric Toller, Jamie Leventhal, Simon Dukrokit, and Yulia Parshinakatis lay it out, was aimed at protecting a president who has been in Iran's crosshairs for years. It's a scene that feels ripped from a novel, except it happened, and the reporting confirms it. Shifting to domestic policy, the University of Michigan is trying something new to address the student mental health crisis. Starting in fall 2027, first-semester freshmen in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts will receive pass/fail grades instead of traditional letter grades. The idea, Mark Arsenault reports, is to ease new students into academic life, encourage them to try different classes, and lessen fears of what a low grade could mean. Letter grades will still be recorded internally for compliance and advising, but the transcript will show only pass or fail. It's a bold experiment at a major public university, and it reflects a growing recognition that the pressure cooker of modern higher education needs a pressure release valve. In Portland, Oregon, a different kind of pressure is building, literally. More than a week after a fire tore through the 116-year-old Centennial Mills building, a former flour mill, what remains of the 8-story warehouse is causing major disruptions. Every floor collapsed during the blaze on August 2nd. The city has set up a safety perimeter. Amtrak trains between Seattle and Portland are paused, but freight trains have been passing the structure anyway, alarming officials who've warned of a potential collapse. Elena Serro reports the cause remains under investigation, but the headache for the city is growing by the day. Now to politics beyond Wisconsin. In Minnesota, Lisa DeMuth, the Speaker of the State House, won the Republican primary for governor, defeating Mike Lindell, the MyPillow founder and prominent election denier endorsed by President Trump. Ernesto Landano reports from St. Paul that the contest revealed deep fissures in Minnesota's GOP, which hasn't won a statewide election since 2006. State party leaders openly despaired when Trump endorsed Lindell, believing he had virtually no chance against Senator Amy Klobuchar in the general. DeMuth, a 59-year-old small business owner, represents a largely rural district and now carries the party's hopes. In South Carolina, Senator Darlene Graham, the sister of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, advanced to a special Republican primary runoff for Senate. She'll face Representative Ralph Norman, a hardline conservative who previously ran for governor. On August 25, Patricia Motzi reports from Columbia that the matchup offers a sharp contrast in experience, though few policy differences. Graham, who stepped in to complete her brother's term after he died last month, has offered little in the way of specifics beyond backing Trump and the party line. And in Connecticut, a 28-year incumbent fell. Luke Bronin, the former mayor of Hartford and a former Navy intelligence officer, defeated Representative John Larson in the Democratic primary for the 1st Congressional District. Lisa Lehrer writes that Bronin, 47, centered his campaign on generational change, arguing that Larson, 78, wasn't prepared to confront the challenges posed by the Trump administration's aggressive push to consolidate power. It follows a pattern of younger challengers toppling longtime incumbents in New York and Denver, a generational shift remaking the Democratic Party from within. In business, David Ellison is playing hardball. The Paramount chief executive told his senior leadership team last week that he would begin pulling the company out of California on October 1 if there's no progress toward resolving a lawsuit by state attorneys general seeking to block his deal to buy Warner Bros. Discovery. Benjamin Mullen, Brooks Barnes, and Lauren Hirsch report that it's unclear whether Ellison will follow through. Moving a media giant out of Hollywood is no small feat, but the threat underscores how high the stakes are for a deal that would reshape the entertainment landscape. At General Motors, Mark Roos has been president for 7 years, ascending to a role his father was fired from decades before. He's known as the company's car guy, and he sat down for an interview to talk electrics, China, and yes, nepotism. The conversation, as presented, touches on the automaker's pivot to EVs, the competitive threat from Chinese manufacturers, and the unusual family history that brought him to the corner office. It's a rare candid moment from a Detroit executive at a moment of profound industry upheaval. Also in the auto world, robots that walk and talk are coming to car factories. But experts warn they may not deliver the efficiency gains proponents claim. The vision is humanoid machines working alongside humans on assembly lines. The reality, so far, is more complicated. It's a reminder that automation's promise often outpaces its delivery. In technology, a notable departure: Brad Lightcap, a longtime OpenAI executive who joined in 2018 and rose to chief operating officer, announced Tuesday he's leaving after 8 years to start a new venture. He offered few details. His exit is the latest in a string of departures from the AI startup. Emmy Martin reports from San Francisco that Lightcap had moved into a special projects role in April before deciding to move on entirely. Meanwhile, a co-founder of xAI, Elon Musk's AI company, is going all in on building open-source artificial intelligence so that, in his words, anyone can control and shape AI for their own needs. It's a direct philosophical counterpoint to the closed, corporate-controlled models dominating the field. The tension between open and closed AI development is becoming one of the defining fault lines of the technology's evolution. And a harrowing story about the real-world consequences of online disinformation. A wave of it contributed to a surge of migrants in the Spanish enclave of Ceuta, on Morocco's northern coast, trying to reach Europe, resulting in about 90 deaths. Stephen Lee Myers, Ida Alamy, and Carlos Barragan trace how a video posted on TikTok and Instagram by a Ceuta newspaper, showing 2 young women in wetsuits with damp hair, was cropped and reposted in Arabic across social media. The implication: they'd just swum across the border. On the Moroccan side, the message landed as an invitation. Tens of thousands surged toward the border 2 days later. It's a devastating case study in how quickly false narratives can move across platforms, across languages, and into physical catastrophe. In New York, a birthday cruise turned tragedy. The 40-foot party boat Sea the City 2, equipped with hot tubs, departed Liberty Landing Marina around 10 p.m. Saturday with 17 young passengers. Captain Josh Cochran piloted past the Statue of Liberty toward the Brooklyn Bridge when he spotted a tiny slash of light moving in the water. What followed was a rescue mission: 12 passengers pulled from the water, a mother and daughter dead, and a federal investigation now underway. Corey Kilgannon gives us the captain's fullest account yet, a night that began as celebration and ended in grief. Also in the city, the fight over attacks on high-end second homes escalated Tuesday. Mayor Zoran Mamdani's administration is grappling with a lawsuit by homeowners that didn't challenge the tax's legality but argued it was rolled out improperly. A Staten Island judge issued a temporary restraining order halting the rollout. The city appealed, which essentially prevents enforcement. Mihir Javeri reports the process, already hurried, just got thornier. And 5 Palestinian Americans, a professor, a former professor, a student, and 2 former students, filed a discrimination lawsuit against Columbia University Monday, claiming the school fostered a hostile environment after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack. Caitlin Freeman reports the complaint, filed in New York State Supreme Court, is the latest in a series of legal battles over Columbia's handling of campus speech, safety, and discipline during the Gaza war. In the arts, a judge ordered the Kennedy Center to pay musician Chuck Redd more than $250,000 in legal fees after dismissing the center's lawsuit against him. Redd had canceled a Christmas Eve jazz concert last year in protest of President Trump's name being added to the institution's marble facade. He'd hosted the annual holiday concert for nearly 20 years. Julia Jacobs reports the center sued him for backing out. The judge dismissed the case and awarded fees, a rare rebuke to an institution that has become a flashpoint in the culture wars. Spotify, meanwhile, is trying to get ahead of the AI-generated music flood. Starting in September, it will affix labels to profiles of artists whose identities it believes were most likely generated by artificial intelligence. Once labeled, those profiles will be excluded from editorial and algorithmic recommendations. Malia Mendez writes it's an effort at transparency and a recognition that the line between human and machine creativity is blurring fast on streaming platforms. At Lincoln Center, Jonathan Hayward, closing out his 3rd year as music director of the festival orchestra, conducted 2 concerts that put new music in conversation with classics. Gabrielle Ferrari, in a critic's notebook, calls him a strong curator, someone who refines a formula and invites audiences into the program. It's the kind of programming that makes the canonical feel fresh and the new feel rooted. In books, Tia Obrecht's new novel Sunrise mashes up Western Gothic, murder mystery, and survival saga in a ghost town that hides century-spanning secrets. Julia Shears writes that thousands of ghost towns rot across the American West, each a silent guardian of epic human dramas, and Obrecht makes you squint hard enough to see them. Sean Ray Lee's A Tender Age follows a 10-year-old into the social powder kegs of schoolyards and summer camps. Jane Who notes it's Lee's most autobiographical novel, yet a risky admission for an ethnic American writer often presumed to be writing about himself regardless. The book explores a boy's volatile, violent world with quiet, devastating precision. And Richard Russo's Under the Falls brings a singer back to the community he left behind, reckoning with a troubled past. Zachary Lazar writes that from the 1980s through the early aughts, Russo's affectionately salty stories of mundane life in the Snowbelt won him a Pulitzer and a loyal readership. This new novel signals a sort of homecoming for the author as much as his protagonist. Food news: at Bar Suzanne in Williamsburg, chef Jackie Carnisi is bucking expectations with an ambitious seafood and raw bar menu, but the French fries, we're told, are still outstanding. Rachel Antonoff, the fashion designer who incorporates farfalle and radishes into her collections, tackles the where to eat questionnaire with her favorite spots for dream date energy. An Elder, a British Indian chop house from Sujan Sarkar, brings burra-spiced lamb chops, Pathar kebab hanger steak, and Dover sole with curry beurre blanc to Manhattan's Hudson Yards area, clubby elegance with wainscoting, velvet, and floral wallpaper. Science: the Trump administration has pulled federal funding for the Arctic Report Card, the annual checkup on the top of the world that has chronicled the region's extraordinary transformation for 20 years. Raymond Jeong reports the Arctic is warming several times faster than the rest of the globe, sea ice dwindling, snow cover shrinking, glaciers thinning, tundra vegetation growing more abundant and fueling massive wildfires. The report card was a rare consistent record of a planet changing in real time. Now it's gone. Back to the eclipse, London's frenzy for glasses continues. Rosasoft's 2 a.m. Uber ride to a convenience store captures the mood: a city suddenly united in staring at the sky, safely. And in a remarkable medical advance, AI is finding sperm where doctors couldn't. New technology may make it easier for men with extremely low sperm counts. Azoospermia affects about 10% of infertile men to have biological children. Andrew Zaleski reports on Dr. Zev Williams, a fertility physician whose hardest job is telling a man, "You're not going to be a father." That conversation may be changing. In wellness, the brat diet, bananas, rice, applesauce, toast long the go-to for stomach bugs, is no longer recommended by experts. We asked them why. And a growing legal debate: should letting children play alone outside be a crime? Ian Frisch tells the story of Molly Shirley, whose 6-year-old son was stopped by a woman demanding to know his age, why he was alone, where he lived. Scared, he ignored her and kept riding his scooter home. His parents, who believed in instilling independence, found themselves in the legal system's crosshairs. It's a question of childhood, autonomy, and when the state gets to decide. Travel: your guide to Copenhagen, picturesque canals, cozy coffee shops, everything you need to plan a visit to the Danish capital. And 5 great American bike rides of 25 miles or less, from a wildflower-lined California coastal path to the tree tunnels of the Harlem Valley Rail Trail in upstate New York. Car-free, varied landscapes, perfect for a spectacular day trip. Real estate: Miami skyline is getting super tall. At least 10 new skyscrapers, 5 of them super talls, over 1,000 feet, will rise in the next 5 years. The Freedom Tower, Miami's first skyscraper at 289 feet in 1925, will be dwarfed by towers nearly 4 times as high. The question: is that such a good idea? Fashion and style: Cristiano Ronaldo and Georgina Rodriguez reportedly married Tuesday in an intimate civil ceremony in Cascais, Portugal, after nearly a decade together and 5 children in their blended family. They shared a photo of overlapping hands with matching bands. See Heartg. Austin, Texas, is leaning into all things Matthew McConaughey. A cinema bearing his name opened ahead of his new film, The Rivals of Amzia King. And a roundup of perfect beach day gear from 5 season regulars who never regret what they towed onto the sand. Obituaries: Richard Lynchman, cultural historian and biographer, died at 95. He spent decades as a magazine editor, wrote an acclaimed history of small-town America, and biographies of Theodore Dreiser and Sinclair Lewis that helped revive interest in those once towering novelists. He co-founded the satirical magazine Monocle in the late 1950s, served at the New York Times Book Review, and was named executive editor of The Nation in 1978. Arlene Smith, lead singer and songwriter of the Chantels, died at 84. The Chantels, 5 teenage girls convening in a Manhattan church basement in October 1957, helped start the girl group wave with Maybe, one of doo-wop's most enduring hits. A stately eruption of romantic loss and hunger that showcased Smith's voice and paved the way for generations. Tom Clark, private equity investor turned sheep farmer, died at 85. On more than 500 acres in upstate New York, he kept a small herd of East Frisian ewes, producing award-winning cheeses and running a high-end restaurant and hotel. He won a blue ribbon at a county fair at age 10 for a sheep he'd raised on his grandfather's farm and decades later, returned to his ovine roots. In the magazine, Casey Michael Henry writes that Glenn Beck and other pundits are turning figures like George Washington into supposedly infallible AI podcasters. Late last year, Beck sat across from an AI-generated Washington, tight t-shirt, lacrosse bro hair, powdered wig updated for the Lex Friedman set. The promise, founding fathers who never misspeak, never tire, never challenge the worldview of their creators. It's the rights fantasy of the founders, now rendered in silicon. And finally, opinion. Thomas Friedman argues that El Sayed, a swing state Democratic Senate nominee in Michigan, needs to keep saying, Jews have a right to a Jewish homeland. It's a clarifying line in a race that could pit Democratic socialists against what Friedman calls King Trump right or wrong Republicans. Thomas Edsall, in a guest essay, writes that Trump's zero-sum mindset is turning us all into losers. $200 billion in consumer costs already, $330 billion more projected, 367,000 full-time job equivalents lost in hours worked. The maelstrom is of his own making. Michelle Cottle examines a Nebraska candidate who's definitely not a Democrat, but Democrats love him anyway. The Democratic brand, she writes, is just too toxic in large swaths of the country. Ezra Klein sits down with Ross Douthat for an exit interview, 1 hour, 13 minutes, as Douthat leaves the Times for 60 minutes. They reflect on seismic changes in media, religion, and politics witnessed over a career that began when they were bloggers and the earth was young. Nate Bliss, a veteran of 3 New York mayoral administrations, asks, should we trust the people building skyscrapers? When 2 structural columns buckled on the 21st floor of a Manhattan office-to-residential conversion, rumors of collapse spread, nearby buildings evacuated. Life in a crowded city depends on trust. Are corners being cut? And Tanya Gold, with photographs by Harry Mitchell, reports from Clacton-on-Sea, can a man with a trash can on his head save Britain? It's the Count Bin-Face question, grounded in the fading seaside town where Farage eats ice cream and politics has become content production. That's your briefing for Wednesday, August 12, 2026. We'll be back tomorrow with the next edition. Until then, stay informed.